Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Trying something different. I kind of started it yesterday. I don't love it, but I feel like it's necessary. Usually, first things first, let's get into the news and notes, right? Here's who's hurt, here's who's playing, etc., etc. The problem is, because I'm doing these in the afternoons now, usually I end up missing stuff. And so I'll tell you something, and then as news comes in, I'm like, oh, actually, there's a change. Oh, actually, I want to make sure that I have the most up-to-date thing, so I don't have to do that. So I'm going to start saving a lot of that stuff for the end. That way I have, at least for me, the most current and up-to-date thing. Just so you know. So sorry if that's annoying to some people who check out the notes and then book it, but I guess this is where we're at now. So I guess for today, usually I try to save, although we are getting kind of late in the week, but I try to save a lot of the comparative stuff for later. I think that this is kind of important because I keep seeing these things. Let me see if I can find that example here. Here is Zach Cruz on X saying, and I alluded to this, not last night, I guess, but the night before, maybe last night, I don't know, I haven't recorded it yet, but the 49ers being 5-5 is not necessarily a great way to gauge them. They're a significantly better team. What I had pointed out is that PFF has them graded, significantly better team than the Packers. The Packers they have is like the 22nd best team. They just happen to have a good record. The 49ers have a bad record despite being clearly a top 10 team. I don't remember exactly what it is, but right. So I don't know the exact answer yet, and I will continue to dig into that. It could be poor red zone efficiency, which the Packers also have. It could be a lot of different things that would cause you to be good in a lot of areas, but not winning. You could say, well, it's all the injuries. Yeah, but not really, because they're still succeeding. The question is, why is that not translating to wins? Anyways, he posted this. The 5-5 49ers are, well, here you go, 4th in PFF grade. So according to PFF, this is the 4th best roster in football. 6th in DVOA, 3rd in adjusted net yards per attempt. That is a quarterback stat, a very good one. 5th in EPA per play, and 2nd in yards per play. Now, one of the things I want to talk about today, because, just because I've been digging into this and it always annoys me, and I talk about it all the time, probably talk about it too often. We have to stop, first of all, saying that any of these stats are the stat, right? So saying that they're 4th in PFF grade, therefore they're the 4th best team. Well, they might be. It's not a completely indirect correlation. There is some correlation there, and it may be close enough that they could be the 4th best team in football. But it is saying something very specifically different, right? 6th in DVOA. Does that mean they're the 6th best team? It might be. The point is, though, we're saying something very specific. They are the 6th this. They are the 4th this. And I guess I would characterize 4th in PFF grade as, according to PFF, the 4th, well, I guess most directly, the 4th highest graded roster, according to PFF, is what it is. But the point is, you put all these things together, this is a top 10 football team. Certainly a top 10, probably top 5 offense, and they're getting Kittle back, presumably. He also posted this later attached to an article that he wrote over at the Packers Wire. Also, per Next Gen Stats, 49ers average 5.5 yards per carry with Kittle on the field and only 3.5 yards per carry when he's not. So expect a massive jump in their rushing ability. And so I don't mean for today to be a massive downer. But I know a lot of people get upset because it's like, well, they're winning and they have a good record and you should be happy. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm not, whatever. But at the same time, I'm not going to be so overly positive that I'm just going to say, well, they're 5-5 and we have 7 wins, so we're better. Let's just look. Let's look and see in how many categories we can say the Packers are actually better than the 49ers outside of record, which is one of the worst ways to judge a team. Now, to be clear, I was ready. As soon as I saw this, you know what? I'm putting money on the 49ers. I'm just doing it. And I went over to it's a little thing we call, JJ put it together, but it's called Packers Index. I primarily do the math side of it, and he handles making it look pretty and putting it all together in a very, very awesome spreadsheet. But we call it Packers Index, and it's sort of expected outcomes, I guess, based on DVOA and ELO. And they do have the Packers at minus 1.14. So close game, but 1 point favorites. And remember, I forgot to mention this last week, felt like it should have been a blowout. The Packers Index said, no, it's about 2 points in the Packers' favor. We won by 1. So they were saying it's actually going to be a lot closer than you think. So this is keeping me from betting on the 49ers. I still really want to, just as an emotional hedge, but I'm going to keep myself from doing that. So that, we'll start with that it is worth noting that based on, again, DVOA and ELO, and this isn't officially from them, this is just our applying their math the way that we feel it should be applied to the games, and each one individually has the Packers. DVOA is almost 2 points in favor of Green Bay. ELO is 0.36 in favor of the Packers. But why don't we start with PFF again? So overall grade, San Francisco 49ers are 4th, Green Bay Packers are 22nd. They have the 49ers with an 88.6 overall grade, and the Packers, again, sandwiched between the Jets and the Saints, below the Bears and the Jets, at a 73.1 grade. Offense, they have the 49ers 4th with an 83, Packers are 18th. Passing, they have the 49ers 12th, the Packers 14th. Pass blocking, Packers number 1. So the one thing Packers fans like to complain about the offensive line is the only thing we excel at. 49ers 13th. Receiving, the 49ers 3rd, the Packers 22nd. Rushing, the Packers 4th, 49ers 12th. Run blocking, 49ers number 1, Packers 27th. It's going to be hard to find a bigger gap than that. On defense, they have the 49ers as the 8th best defense. The Packers ranked 23rd. Run defense, they have the Packers actually better, 24th compared to the 49ers 27th. That's an unusual 49ers team to have such a bad run defense. Tackling, they have the Packers 16th. Where the heck are the 49ers? I cannot find them. There they are, 23rd. Pass rush, yikes. The 49ers are 13th. The Packers 28th. Coverage, the Packers are 8th, but the 49ers are 2nd. So I'm just happy to see the Packers up there in 8th. And then special teams, the Packers are all the way down at 28th. The 49ers are 22nd. Now, to be clear, I do think the Packers have a better special teams in this. This is taking account for the entire year. They had the worst special teams for a long time when we had the kicker that just could not make anything in Narvison. So they're kind of compensating for that. So pretty much a clean sweep with the exception of a couple categories. PFF thinks they are better in almost every phase of the game. DVOA. The Packers rank 8th, so that, it's a very respectable team, but San Francisco is 6th. So very different than, DVOA and PFF very much disagree on the team overall. And I think that, again, this is the benefit of understanding what the things mean, because then you can understand it's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's a question of what are you actually telling me? PFF is grading out our individual players pretty poorly. However, the actual production on the field is quite good. To me, and it could be a lot of other things, but to me, there are a couple things. Number one, the actual people that are grading out well are the ones that matter, quarterback, etc. You could have some people that have high grades because of their run blocking and run defense and stuff that isn't as valuable. Now, that's kind of hard to believe because they're, not actually grading out the quarterback all that well. But that would be one possible area. The other is coaching. If you're able to get a bad roster to a 7-3 record with actual good output on the field, that is a demonstration of really good coaching. The other would be situational. You're not a great team, but you convert in the red zone and whatnot, which again, the Packers are not doing that, so it's hard to believe. But you can see sort of these gaps between the two to say they're both correct in their respective fields, but understanding the difference between the two can maybe tell us what exactly is working and what exactly is not. It's kind of funny. I feel like I'm learning a lot. I started this exercise with the running back, and we'll get to that, but I really feel like, again, rather than just saying, well, obviously that shows you that these are stupid, I think you can learn maybe more from the discrepancies than you can from just the individual stats. That there's a sort of principle when it comes to the Bible, and that is, you look at sort of, well, this book of the Bible says this, and this book of the Bible says this, and it's like, well, see, that's how you know it's unreliable. And it's like, well, if you understand sort of how eyewitness accounts work, what you do is you piece these things together to be able to put together a picture. That's kind of the point. It's the same with like a police officer talks to this person, said, I heard 2 gunshots. This person said, I heard 3. This person, I heard 1. And, this person heard a scream, and this person heard this. And you take all these different things and you put it together to try to create a cohesive picture. And so looking at, okay, they're bad in this and good in this, even though both of them try to give an overall picture, gives you an even clearer picture. By the way, again, DVOA does not, PFF does not curve based on your opponents, and DVOA does. So if you're facing tougher opponents, you're going to have a lower PFF grade and a higher DVOA. Now, if you're going to ask me, and again, I kind of come to this conclusion too, this also helps you kind of understand the stats themselves and which one do you want to lean on more. If you're going to ask me, okay, which team, are the Packers good or bad then, based on these 2 things? I would say they're good. Not because I'm just being biased, but because one is more closely trying to tell me exactly what I want to know. So, for example, what does DVOA actually tell me? Let me read this. DVOA assesses a team's efficiency by evaluating each play relative to league averages, considering situational context and opponent strength. What I want most of all is, and I've said this before, and this is the problem when it comes to like evaluating draft prospects. I feel like too many people will look at a play and go, dang, that was a big play. And I'll look at it and say, I don't care if that was a good play because anybody could have done that. He's wide open and he runs to a wide open end zone. Just because it's a 90-yard touchdown doesn't mean anything to me. What I care about is how good of a job do you do compared to what everybody else would have done in that same situation. What do you want, kitty cat? What's wrong? Kitty cat's limping. We don't know what's wrong with him. He's meowing like crazy. But anyways, it goes on to say the Packers' a higher DVOA indicates better performance compared to league average. In other words, what they're saying is if you put other teams in this situation, how well would they have done? So it's really grading everybody on, let me put it this way. If we go back to DVOA here, the Packers rank 8th. Essentially what DVOA is telling me is that if every other team in the NFL had the exact same schedule with the exact same situation, everything that you dealt with, Philly, San Francisco, Kansas City, Minnesota, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Detroit would have done better than you. Chargers, Denver, Houston, Arizona, Washington, Pittsburgh, Tampa, Cincinnati, Seattle, the Rams, Atlanta, New Orleans, Indy, Jets, Chicago, Miami, Giants, Jags, Dallas, Tennessee, Las Vegas, New England, Carolina, Cleveland would have done worse than you. What does a low PFF grade mean? It means exactly what I said. This is film grades on individual players. Packers' 22nd place ranking implies that on a play-to-play basis, individual performances may not consistently meet high standards. So, again, I got the robot helping me through this a little bit, but some of it is kind of intuitive if you just think about it. But here's what it says. The Packers' higher DVOA combined with lower PFF suggests that while individual performances might be inconsistent, which we talked about, again, 2 nights ago or whatever, the inconsistency is freaking killing us. And what have I also said about PFF? It's a consistency grade. So there you go. While it might be inconsistent, the team excels in situational execution and overall strategy. It's coaching. This indicates effective coaching and the ability to capitalize on key moments, even if individual player grades are average. So more or less agrees with what I had said. Reality based on the discrepancy. The Packers' success appears to stem from strong situational play and strategic execution rather than consistently high individual performances. So, I mean, again, this is putting the picture together, and it's what I started to realize 2 nights ago or whatever. We're really lacking in consistency with our players. We're lacking in really high-end elite talent, which would absolutely contribute to high PFF grades, guys in the 90s. We don't have guys in the 90s. We have none. In fact, I don't know if we have any in the 80s right now. But we have a bunch of guys that are consistently contributing in the 70s and whatnot, and there's a constant rotation of guys. So you might have one game with a bunch of guys playing really well, and then the next week, all those guys that played well played like garbage, but all the guys that didn't play well played well. And so it's just this rotating thing where nobody's giving you consistent anything, but you are consistently having enough good players and good plays and good designs and good decisions to actually win the overall game. And not just win, but play well, according to DVOA. In summary, while the Packers demonstrate strong situational efficiency and strategic execution, there is room for improvement in individual player performance consistency, as indicated by their PFF grades. And I don't know that anybody would necessarily disagree with that. We do have an issue with that. Even the guys that we like I said, Xavier McKinney, we haven't seen him in a while. And guys like Jaire, really good. He's not on the field, so he can't contribute to the PFF grade or DVOA or anything. So we're not getting consistently good play from even Jordan. You know, I mean, he's grading out pretty well, but the reason we're not seeing elite Jordan because he keeps throwing picks. He'd have a bunch of 80s and 90s right now if he wasn't throwing 1, 2, 3 picks, pick sixes, all this garbage. It also makes it really hard to come down on the coach because, you know, again, on one hand, you want to blame the coach for the players not being consistent and prepared and all that stuff. On the other hand, the team's efficiency above and beyond the team's ability is out of control. Their ability to win when the players are not putting out that level of play is really impressive. Again, look at the gap in grade when you look at PFF. They're the only team with a 7-game winning record that's way down there as far as what the players are putting out this year. The players have not been doing a good job. The team has been doing a good job. So, anyways, those are kind of the two things that I'm trying to do simultaneously. Number one, where do the Packers actually rank compared to the San Francisco 49ers? Number two, what the heck does this crap actually mean? And what can piecing the different pieces together actually tell us? And I think the bigger discrepancies actually give us a clearer picture. And we'll get to that with Josh Jacobs and probably a few others. There's a really good one with Josh Jacobs where I was kind of bummed to see how terribly he was doing in one category. And then when I looked at another category where he was very good and then pieced it together, it's like, oh, that's what's freaking going on here, huh? Okay, all right. But somehow we're already 16 minutes into this, so why don't we take a break? We'll come back and start looking at a few more of these little dealy jobbers. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. By the way, another really interesting thing, you would have thought Green Bay would have plummeted quite a bit after what they did last week against the Bears, right? You expect a blowout against the Bears, you win by 1 point. They went up. Green Bay went from ranking 9th to ranking 8th. Now, that could have to do with somebody else dropping. I don't know. I can't see what the actual percentage is. Maybe I can go find it, but I don't care. But the point is they went up. And it's actually not all that surprising because, again, when I use DVOA to try to determine what the final score is going to be and whatnot, it was not very flattering to the Packers. I don't remember exactly what it was. It might have even been in favor of the Bears. I think one of them was in favor of the Bears. One of them was the Packers, and it ended up being a close game. I don't remember exactly. But it's not all that surprising. In other words, we had high expectations. Other areas did not, including DVOA. And what were we, like? We weren't that big of favorites. It's not like we were 15-point favorites like you saw with Detroit against Jacksonville. And that's what I think we felt like it should have been. 15-point favorites, and we end up exceeding that. What did we end with, like 4-point favorites or something? All right, DVOA looking at offense overall. San Francisco is ranked 5th, Green Bay 3rd. This is an area that has consistently been high all year, and despite all the frustrations in certain areas, this, that, or the other, based on how DVOA looks at things, they have consistently said the Packers have outperformed almost every team offensively. Only Baltimore and Detroit rank higher. Now, they rank significantly higher. For example, if you look at Buffalo, the next best offense, we're at 18.7%. They're at 17.2%, right? So it's pretty close. But to jump up to Detroit, you have to go from 18.7 to 21.1. And then from there to Baltimore, 21.1 to 34.8. That is ridiculously high and higher than everybody else by a mile. So that should give us some solace, just from the standpoint of as frustrated as we are. Again, not that DVOA is flawless in their approach to things. They try to be as accurate as possible, but you can't account for every single thing every single time. But they obviously can account for interceptions and big things like that, and they are. Even with all that, they're looking at this as saying the Packers are the 3rd best offense. So it's as scary and frustrating as the offense seems to have been. That's quite a flattering ranking. Now, on the other hand, on defense, they have the 49ers ranked 6th. Green Bay is ranked 16th. Now, comparatively, I'll take that, right? I mean, it's we're inside the top 20, which is nice. And I think, if anything, I don't know how we ranked last week individually. I would guess our offense went up quite a bit because they were able to move the ball pretty easily against a top-ranked defense. Our defense probably took a hit last week. Again, just guessing here, because of their inability to stop a pretty low-ranked offense. Holy cow, you know what's crazy? Chicago's defense, I mean, they've been plummeting for a while. You know how much of a number the Packers offense did on them? They dropped to 15th. Chicago is one spot ahead of us right now on defense. They went from, I think, what did I say, 4th to 6th? Now they're 15th? My Lord. Special teams they don't care for very much. They have Green Bay ranked 24th, but they have San Francisco ranked 31st. Second worst special teams unit in all of football. And then if you look at their estimated wins column, based on all the stats that they have, in other words, let's just say everybody is in the exact equal situation. What would their record be? They have Detroit at 10 wins, 10.4, Minnesota at 8.6, Buffalo at 7.9, Green Bay at 7.9. So they're tied for third. Crazy that Green Bay, so basically Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay are 1, 2, 3. So listen, and that is ahead of San Francisco, by the way. Then Baltimore at 7.8, then Kansas City at 7.7, San Francisco 7.7. So DVOA is saying maybe don't fret. They seem to like us more than San Francisco in certain areas, maybe, not all areas, not necessarily overall, but they seem to be painting a picture of this is not a juggernaut 5-5 San Francisco team and a garbage Green Bay team. It is a massively underrated San Francisco team, but also a pretty good Green Bay team, top 10 Green Bay team. If we flip over to NFL Pro and look at some statistics here for the team, if we look at EPA per play, the 49ers rank 5th, the Green Bay Packers rank 11th. Now, one of the things you're going to learn once we get to Josh Jacobs is that I am cooling on my taste for EPA. It's not a terrible stat, especially as a team stat, which is what we're talking about right now. But I just think that I prefer the efficiency stats, the over-expected type stats to general EPA because it can miss a lot. EPA per pass, the 49ers are 5th. The Green Bay Packers are 11th. EPA per rush, the 49ers are 7th. The Green Bay Packers are 11th. So in pretty much every category, based on the EPA, the 49ers are better than us, passing and running. I think one of the things I really don't like necessarily is the constant praising of this is the best rushing offense we've seen from the Packers in a long time, and really all they're talking about is total yards, which I think is completely stupid. All we're talking about is the fact that we're running the ball more and ending up with more yards because we're running the ball more. I don't know. I'm not saying we have a bad offense. We have to stop doing that. We have to. The fact that we finally got a guy that we can put a ton of carries on, and because we're putting a ton of, if we'd have just run Aaron Jones more, it would have been the same thing. Again, I don't care about total. I care about efficiency. So yes, the Packers right now in rush yards per game are 4th. Great. Who cares? Probably as a result of that, we are 9th in pass yards per game. If we had less rushing attempts, we'd have less rushing yards and probably more passing attempts and more passing yards. Are we better because we're running more and passing less? Probably not, but I guess we can throw a party over it. I don't know. If we look at defense, EPA per play, number 1 and 2 are Vikings-Lions. I frickin' hate that so much. San Francisco is ranked 9th. Green Bay is ranked 12th. That would make, they have actually we're tied. Negative 0.09. There's 4 teams that have that, and the 49ers, the Packers are 2 of them. Tennessee and Buffalo are the other 2. Pass defense from an EPA standpoint, the 49ers are 8th. Packers are 9th. Pretty close. And then EPA per rush, the Green Bay Packers rank 15th. The 49ers rank 17th. So very, very similar based on that. But let's get into the individual players and whatnot here. Quarterback one is quite brutal. All right, so we're going to rip through a couple of these. Again, I will complain about the metrics, but the bottom line is pretty much every single one of them is going to be not in our favor. CPOE. Now, again, I like the efficiency metrics. I don't like CPOE for quarterbacks, especially if you have a bunch of drops, because that is not factored in. It should be. I think the metric would be great if that was the case. It takes into account field position, down and distance, air yards, distance to the sticks, home field advantage, indoor versus outdoor, ERA, pass location, quarterback pressure, all this stuff, right? I mean, it's such a cool metric. It's looking at it and saying, man, here's the difficulty of that throw. Did you make a good throw? Except it doesn't say, did you make a good throw? It says, did the pass get completed? Well, that's stupid because at least 50% of that equation goes on the wide receiver. But still, Brock Purdy ranks 6th with a positive 3.5%. Jordan Love ranks 31st with a negative 2.2%. Again, I don't know how much of that goes on drops. I know he's had a terrible year as far as his receivers dropping stuff. But then we get to EPA per dropback. In this case, you have Brock Purdy ranks 6th. Jordan Love ranks 17th. Well, it's because he's pressured all the time. Okay, well, that's obviously not true. Brock Purdy is the 11th most pressured quarterback in the NFL. Jordan Love is the 25th most pressured quarterback in the NFL, according to Next Gen Stats or whatever. In fact, I put up this little card here. You know, those, like one of the basic ones. It's not really super advanced stats, but you know, where they show the two side by side and then they highlight the ones that are positive. The only two where Jordan Love is ahead is quarterback record. By the way, Jordan's record is actually 5-3, and passing touchdowns, where he has 16 compared to 13. Games, completion percentage, pass yards per attempt, pass yards per game, interceptions, passer rating, rush attempts, rush yards per attempt, rushing touchdowns, and fantasy points are all Brock Purdy. Pick sixes, Jordan has 2, Brock Purdy has 0. I cannot believe he has 2 pick sixes on the season. Jordan does have a higher touchdown percentage, 6.2% compared to 4.2%. He has a higher interception rate, 4.3 compared to 2.6. Sacks, Jordan Love has been sacked 8 times, Brock Purdy 20 times. If you look at sack rate, because he missed 2 games, Jordan is sacked 3% of the time, Brock Purdy 6.13% of the time. Adjusted net yards per attempt, Jordan 6.95, Brock Purdy 7.41. Pro Football Reference has some advanced stats that are pretty cool too. Again, you got to take it with a grain of salt how good they are at actually judging these things, but let's go through it anyways. Batted passes, Brock Purdy 8, Jordan Love 4. Throwaways are tied at 7. Drops, this is crazy. Let's just do let's do total and then percentage. Brock Purdy has had 12 drops on the season. Remember, 2 less games for Jordan. Brock Purdy 12, Jordan Love 21 drops. 4% drop rate for Brock Purdy, 8.4% for Jordan Love. But that doesn't mean that, well, Jordan's more accurate or whatever. Bad throw percentage. Brock Purdy 15%, Jordan Love 17.6%. On target percentage, Brock Purdy 76.8%, Jordan Love 72.4%. So listen, I don't think you can make a very serious case right now that Jordan Love is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. It's not necessarily an insult. I stand by the fact that Brock Purdy is massively underrated. There's a lot of talk about he's being carried by his team and being carried by Shanahan. A lot of quarterbacks have been through there, and they've been in that Shanahan system, and they don't perform that well. In fact, you could argue Jordan Love is in a very similar system, and Aaron Rodgers was in a very similar system, and I don't know that any of them have played as well as Brock Purdy, especially consistently over like the 3 years he's been there. He's been like a top 5 quarterback every year. It's time to stop pretending that he's not a good quarterback. Would he fall off somewhere else? Yeah, maybe a little bit. And would Tom Brady have fallen off if he was in a different situation? Maybe that would have been argued 3 years into his tenure with the New England Patriots. I don't know. You know, there's a lot of talk about that he was a system quarterback and all that stuff for many years. And then he goes to Tampa and he freaking dominates. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I was wrong about that one. Let's take a look at the running back situation. Now, it's tough because the 49ers don't even have they don't have Christian McCaffrey on here because he hasn't run enough times for it to even really count. We can look at his stats and whatnot and another thing, but right now, the running back for the 49ers is Jordan Mason. He's the one that's been doing everything. But let me just do this real quick because although Christian McCaffrey has only played in 2 games and whatnot, let's go through some of his individual stats because it is worth mentioning. His rush yards over expected per attempt, because we're not going to do cumulative, per attempt, he is the second worst out of 9 people on his team that have run footballs. Ricky Pearsall is number 1, then Kyle Juszczyk, then Isaac Guerrero, then Jordan Mason, then Brock Purdy, then Brandon Allen, then Patrick Taylor, then Christian McCaffrey, and then Deebo Samuel. He's also the 3rd worst in EPA. Now, they don't have per attempt, they have cumulative, but that is kind of a big deal to be, first of all, you're negative. That just goes to show, in general, that on a per-play basis, you are negative. And presumably, if he had run as many times as, say, Jordan Mason, he would be below Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is at a negative 10.8. So when I compare to Jordan Mason, understand that it's not, well, it's because Christian McCaffrey's significantly better. No, he's not. He's actually playing worse than that. By the way, there is more speed over on San Francisco. I've been waiting for these guys to crack 20 miles per hour in Green Bay. Deebo Samuel did it once, Jordan Mason did it once, and Isaac Guerrero did it once on rushing plays. But all right, let's look at it. So, yes, Josh Jacobs is third in yards. Do I care? Not even slightly. When you look at yards per carry, and they include quarterbacks, I wish they didn't, but they do, Josh Jacobs ranks 13th. Jordan Mason is 7th. Jordan Mason is at 5.1 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs is at 4.8. Here's where things get really interesting, though. If you look at rush yards over expected, Josh Jacobs is the 8th best. Jordan Mason is the 4th best. If you look at rush EPA, where the heck is Jordan Mason? It doesn't really matter. He's kind of irrelevant because I don't think he's going to be playing as much. He's 27th, whatever. Josh Jacobs is 41st out of 46. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's the 6th lowest total EPA. Now, again, this is cumulative, so more carries is actually hurting him. But I saw that and I thought, what the heck is going on? How can you be one of the highest in RYOE, rush yards per attempt, and one of the lowest in rush EPA? But again, what do? You go through the exercise and say, okay, what are the differences, and see if that picture can kind of give you an answer. Here's my real quick and dirty answer on this. I think Josh Jacobs is a good runner who's being put in bad situations. Now, you got to remember, EPA is, it does not care about situation. I mean, it kind of does, but the way that it kind of calculates situation is it says, given your down and distance and all that stuff, which it is taking into account, we think you're probably going to score this many points. The goal, if you want a higher EPA, is to run a play that is going to improve the EPA generally. Now, first of all, it should be pointed out that running is one of the worst ways to improve EPA. Rushing plays usually have a negative EPA. So that should be the first thing. In fact, there are only 11 running backs that have positive EPAs. Actually, it's less than that. And this is also how you know this is not a very good running back stat, because it's, EPA hates running. It's like if you want to improve your odds of scoring, you need to throw the ball, is what EPA tells you almost every single time. Number one by a mile in EPA is Jalen Hurts. After that is Jaden Daniels. These are not the best running backs. The reason that their EPA is so high is because they're in situations where, for example, it's 3rd and 10. He's looking to pass. He doesn't see anybody, but he sees wide open green grass and runs for 15 yards. That's massive for EPA. He's only rushing when it's a positive situation. When he has that's the only time these quarterbacks are going to run, and they're going to pick up big yards. EPA loves that. Rush yards over expected doesn't care because it's looking at the situation. It said you picked up 10 yards on a situation where you should have picked up 10 yards. Who gives a crap? Yeah, but it was a huge play, right? I feel like EPA is kind of a fan stat where it's like, that was huge. Whereas the efficiency stat of rush yards over expected says, what did you do better than what anybody else could? And any idiot would have picked up those exact same amount of yards, right? It's kind of like if you took a defense off the field and you were on the 1 yard line and you ran, say you're on the goal line, you ran 100 yards, 99 yards for a touchdown. Rush yards over expected would give you like a 0. EPA per rush would give you what? 7, I think, presumably, right? I don't know. 7 minus whatever your odds were sitting at the goal line, I think is how that's calculated. And so that's how, for example, you have Daniel Jones as 5th in rush EPA. Because he's just an opportunist. He never runs, but when he does, it's because he can pick up a first down. But rush yards over expected says each and every time you run, how often are you doing better than what would have been expected? And Josh Jacobs ranks 8th in that category. So the discrepancy here, and we can't know exactly, but there's a couple things that you can point to. Let me kind of run through what the robot had to say about it, just to kind of keep things organized. Basically just says both metrics assess a player's performance relative to expectations, yet they differ in focus and calculation, leading to discrepancy. Rush yards over expected evaluates a running back's efficiency by comparing actual rushing yards to the expected yards on each carry, considering factors like defensive alignment and game situation. A high RYOE per attempt indicates that a player consistently gains more yards than anticipated, showcasing individual skill and maximizing each run. That's what matters. EPA measures the impact of a player's actions on the team's likelihood of scoring. That's the other thing. It's a team stat. If you have a bad run blocking offensive line, that's going to hurt you. It accounts for down, distance, field position, and game context. For running backs, a positive EPA suggests that their play contributes to increasing the team's expected points, while a negative EPA indicates the opposite. So, before we continue, very simply put, Josh Jacobs is exceeding expectations, but every time we use him, it kind of hurts us. We're not using Josh Jacobs in a way that when he carries, we usually feel happy about it. Something really good happened that makes it more likely that we're going to score. Usually when Josh Jacobs runs, we feel less likely that he's about to score. All right, continuing. Possible reasons for discrepancy. Situational usage. High leverage situations. If Jacobs frequently carries the ball in critical situations, for example, third and short, goal line scenarios, and fails to convert, it negatively impacts EPA more than RYOE. These situations are pivotal for scoring potential, heavily influencing EPA calculations. So EPA cares a lot about how well you did in that situation. RYOE might not be negative at all. If they look at it and go, you're expected to get about 4 inches here, and you pick up 5 inches, but you don't convert, I mean, that's not going to be a real thing. I'm just giving you an example. EPA doesn't give a crap. You either did the job or you didn't. I don't care if they stack the box and your offensive line can't block or any of that stuff. I don't care. Early down rushing. Conversely, excelling on early downs and with substantial yardage can boost RYOE without significantly impacting EPA. So picking up 6 yards on first down, I think it's probably going to be positive for both, but it's going to be more heavily positive in one direction than the other. Trailing in games. When the Packers are behind, rushing plays may be less effective in altering the game's outcome, leading to lower EPA despite good individual performance. Predictable play calling. Defenses anticipate run plays can limit their effectiveness, reducing EPA even if Jacobs manages to exceed expectations on those carries. So, how many times have we seen where Josh Jacobs is just getting mugged and instead of getting negative 2 yards, he picks up 4 or 2? Well, if that's on first down, for example, 2 yards on first down is negative EPA. Your odds of scoring just went down. However, you turn negative 2 into positive 2, that's a 4-yard over expected gain. And then finally, turnovers and negative plays. Any fumbles or negative plays by Jacobs would severely impact EPA as they directly decrease the team's scoring potential, while RYOE per attempt might remain unaffected if such plays are infrequent. So he's doing a better job than would be expected. The problem is he's not being put in situations necessarily to succeed. But again, potentially bad play calling, bad offensive line blocking, and either not being given those third down carries or not converting the third and fourth down carries or whatever the case may be, or goal line or whatever. Especially where you have other guys like Derrick Henry that when you get inside the red zone, they're likely to run the ball, whereas the Packers, they're throwing it. If we have a rushing score, it's going to be on accident. We didn't intend to get all the way in there at that time unless we're like right on the goal line. Even from 5 yards out, and this has started with Rodgers like 10 years ago, and that was like a revolutionary thing. We're 5 yards out and you're actually throwing. That's crazy. Well, that's become an NFL staple, especially the Packers, though. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but they're very likely to throw in that situation. So again, I found that pretty cool, more so than comparing the running backs, because again, we're not going to see Jordan Mason as much as was in the past, pending Christian McCaffrey's injury status. But it is interesting to kind of get a clearer picture on Josh Jacobs. The running game has not been effective in helping us to succeed. It's not. It's hurting us. That being said, Josh Jacobs is doing as good a job as he possibly could, given the circumstances. Oh, they do actually have EPA per attempt in the advanced metrics. He ranks... Oh, I got to go to the next page here. Oh, there he is. 32nd. 32nd in EPA per play. So, again, rushing with him. And actually, let me just look at all the different Packers and see if any of these guys are positive. So, EPA per attempt right now, Tucker Kraft is the highest. And again, why? Because Tucker Kraft is only the guy that comes in and takes the direct snap and goes for the tush push. So of course he has a high EPA per play as long as he's converting that. Where is he at with rush yards over expected per attempt? He's at positive 0.4 per attempt. That's 6th on the team. Because he's getting basically what you would expect, but it's really high value runs. And again, who's the highest in EPA, rush EPA? It's the quarterbacks. Malik Willis is number 1. Jordan Love is number 2. Then it's Tucker Kraft. Then it's Jaden Reed, which is going to really infuriate everybody because it's like, oh, this guy's freaking terrible. But really isn't the case. It's more situational. Then Emmanuel Wilson. Then Chris Brooks, all positive. Bo Melton. Christian Watson, negative 1.4. Marshawn Lloyd, negative 1.8. Josh Jacobs, negative 23.3. So, I mean, just looking at EPA per attempt, you can kind of see this is probably not what we want to use necessarily. But if we go with rush yards over expected per attempt, Malik Willis is still number one. That's not super surprising because he's actually a very good runner and he's actually breaking tackles and things like that. Jaden Reed is number two, which really shouldn't be all that surprising because when we look at the lack of success, it has nothing to do, especially recently, with him doing something wrong. There's nowhere to go. Then Jordan, then Jacobs. So our number one running back is Josh Jacobs. Then Emmanuel Wilson, then Tucker Kraft, then Chris Brooks is 8th, Marshawn Lloyd is 9th, Watson is 10th. Watson's never been very good at that. But that feels more correct, does it not? It's not to say EPA is useless because it still helps paint a broader picture of a thing that is real. It's not that EPA is garbage. It's not that it's stupid. It's that it's telling you something very directly and specifically, and it helps build out a bigger and more clear picture of the entire situation surrounding that player. Anyways, why don't we'll take a break. I don't know. We'll probably do receiving and defense. We should do receiving. I was going to skip to defense, but I do want to take a quick look at the comparative between those two. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. So I think, let me go over to PFF here because it's kind of hard with next-gen stats. So if we have the two teams comparatively, here is in order the receiving grades. Let me actually get rid of the guys that haven't played very much. So there's 7 different receivers. Here is how they rank as far as their grades. Juwan Jennings, 87.6. Deebo Samuel, 78.7. Christian Watson, 76.5. Brandon Ayuk, 74.1. Jaden Reed, 71.1. Romeo Doubs, 66.7. Dontavian Wicks, 56.7. So the top, there are 3 of the top 4 are 49ers, and then all of the bottom 3 are Packers. If it wasn't for Christian Watson, they would have all the best receivers. We'd have all the worst receivers. The only 2, and it's actually a good group all around, the only 2 that are not in the 70s of this entire group are Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks. Wicks is very understandable. Doubs, it's largely just because he cannot consistently put anything together. He got off to a slow start, then he had his little flurry of being good, and he's been absolutely horrible the last 2 weeks, which, you know, I don't like it. I hate it. But at the same time, it's like, look, we're waiting for somebody to step up and declare what they are so we can make proper decisions, especially with Romeo since he had his little hissy fit. So if this is what it is, then this is what it is. You got an attitude problem. We got to decide who to pay. It looks like I really want to pay Jaden Reed and Christian Watson at this point, or the 2 I'd really like to pay. It creates a problem with paying other people. And at this point, I mean, if you're going to put together, he had a 48 and a 54 his last 2 weeks as a receiver. Just plummeted his overall grade because he had his worst 2 weeks of the season. Okay, that's what it is, I guess. If we look at reception percentage, Jaden Reed is actually the highest despite all the drops, which is impressive, 77%. Then Juwan Jennings, then Doubs, Watson, Deebo, Ayuk, and then Wicks, clearly. Yards per reception is Packers are the highest. Christian Watson, 19. Jaden Reed, 16. And then it's Ayuk, Samuel, Jennings, Doubs, Wicks. If we look at yards per route run, probably the best metric that we have here for PFF, it is Juwan Jennings, then Reed, then Watson, then Samuel, Ayuk, Doubs, and Wicks. So it's not all that different. It actually just drops Deebo Samuel below Reed and Watson. It catapults Reed up. If we look at drop percentage, number 1 is Wicks, number 2 is Reed, number 3 is Doubs. Of course, the top 3 are Packers. Then it's Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, the lowest drop percentage. I've been telling you, man, this guy has been so sneaky good. Christian Watson, you know how many drops he has? I honestly didn't even know this. You know how many drops he has this year? According to PFF, 0. I'm pretty sure I remember him having a drop. According to PFF, it's 0. Let me look somewhere else, because I swear he had a drop. No, stat head, Christian Watson, 0 drops. Wow. The guy who came into the league with serious drop issues is the only guy on either team that has no drops. Contested catch rate, take a wild guess. Christian Watson, 8 of 10 this year. 80% is psychotic. And by the way, a lot of guys have actually really high, especially Packers. Jaden Reed, 7 of 9, that's 78%. Romeo Doubs, 10 of 14, 71%. If our guys were not so good in 50-50 situations, Jordan would have no completions. He loves throwing up these contested balls and letting our guys go get them. Unfortunately, we have those guys. Then it's a huge drop down to Juwan Jennings at 61%, Brandon Ayuk 57%, Debo 40%. Dontavian Wicks is 0 for 9. Good Lord, Dontavian. What are you doing, bro? He has dropped 27% of the passes thrown to him, and he has caught 0 of 9 contested balls. That is unbelievable. Christian Watson has dropped 0 passes and 8 of 10 contested passes. That's ridiculous. Passer rating when targeted, Jaden Reed, number 1, then Jennings, then Watson, then Debo Samuel. Those are all the guys that are over 100. Reed is way up, 146, then Jennings, 129.9. Then a big drop down to Watson at 101.9, Debo 106. Then Romeo is 93.5, Brandon Ayuk 64.5, Dontavian Wicks with a 63.3. And then penalties, Romeo has 3 penalties against him. Juwan Jennings has 3. Debo Samuel has 3. A lot of penalties for them, 6 for their top 2 guys. And then Watson, Wicks, and Ayuk have 1. Jaden Reed with 0. Looking at that little highlighted card or whatever, Jaden Reed kind of dominates as far as all the stats go. It's got a lot of different stuff, rushing, receiving, punt return, all that stuff. But most games, Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, the only 2 that have played 10 games. Although I think the 49ers, they're 5-5. They played 10 games. Nobody on their team has played every game. Receptions, number 1 is Juwan Jennings. Receiving yards is Reed. Yards per reception is Watson. Rushing touchdowns, Reed and Wicks, which is really weird. Oh, receiving touchdowns. I was like, when did he ever give a rushing touchdown? Rushing attempts is Debo Samuel. Rushing yards is Jaden Reed. Yards per attempt is Jaden Reed. Rushing touchdowns is Reed and Samuel both have 1. Punt returns 9 for Reed. Return yards, Reed. Kick return is Samuel with returns and yards. And then fantasy points, Jaden Reed is number 1, 104.8 fantasy points. What other fun little stats do we have here? Advanced receiving. So yards after catch per reception. Debo and Jaden Reed are actually tied, 7.8. That is crazy. We started, when Jaden Reed was going off, we kind of started saying he's like a mini Debo. And that sort of seems to be the case. He's targeted further down the field than Debo. Yards before catch per reception, Jaden Reed is 9.2. Debo is 7.1. And then after catch per reception, 7. Think how crazy that is. So on average, Jaden Reed is thrown to 9.2 yards down the field, and on average, per reception, he's running 7.8 yards after that. Big drop-off then down to Christian Watson at 4.8 is the third highest. Ayuk 4.3, Wicks 3.8, Juwan Jennings 3.3. So the Packers are better after the catch is crazy, and largely because Jaden Reed is keeping pace with Debo Samuel. Watson is better than Ayuk, and Wicks is better than Juwan Jennings, although Wicks doesn't ever catch anything, so what the hell does it matter? They have a stat that is receptions per broken tackle, so you want this actually to be lower than higher because, that's more broken tackles. I wish they would have done it the other way around, but whatever. I suppose the number would be microscopic. Juwan Jennings is number 1. He has 4 broken tackles. It's 10.5 receptions per broken tackle. Then Brandon Ayuk, then Dontavian Wicks, then Debo Samuel, then Jaden Reed, and Christian Watson has no broken tackles, which actually doesn't super surprise me. He's super fast. As far as like being agile and making people miss, he just doesn't do that. That's why he's bad at the end-around jet sweep stuff. But straight line speed and everything, he is fantastic. We already did drop percentage, although this is probably a different number, but I don't really care. Again, they agree that Christian has 0. Passer rating we already did. So I think that's about it. I think you would probably have to say that they have a better receiving group, but it is close, and it's pretty cool to see that the Packers have such a cool and comparable group, right? So you've got, Jaden Reed is like Debo Samuel, but maybe not quite as good right now. They don't really have a Christian Watson on their team, I don't think. It's actually a slower, bigger kind of a group. I think Brandon Ayuk had a 4.5, Juwan Jennings 4.72, so he's like a throwback, just doesn't have the 40 time, but he's just a great route runner or whatever. But I guess if you were to continue the comps, you'd have Christian Watson was like the Brandon Ayuk, and Wicks is a significantly worse. Actually, it'd be Romeo Dobbs would be like the Juwan Jennings, right? And then Wicks just doesn't belong in this conversation. And if you were to do that comparison, I think Debo is a little better than Reed right now, mostly because Reed has started to fall off. He was winning that race. Juwan Jennings is better than Romeo Dobbs. Christian Watson is better than Brandon Ayuk. But these are talented groups. And then if we looked at the tight ends, it's not even close. I know we love Tucker Kraft, but receiving grade, George Kittle 91, Tucker Kraft 61. 560 yards to 376, 7 touchdowns to 5 touchdowns. Let's see, yards per route run, George Kittle 2.4, Tucker Kraft 1.38. George Kittle with 1 drop, Tucker Kraft with 2. Drop percentage, Kittle 2.3%, Tucker Kraft 6.7%. Contested catch rate, George Kittle is 9 of 12, which is 75%. Tucker Kraft is 1 of 2, 50%. Passer rating when targeted, 135 for Kittle, 126 for Kraft. A lot more missed tackles forced for Tucker Kraft, 9 compared to 4 for Kittle. That's kind of his bread and butter. I like Kraft, but I'm not even close to pretending he is anywhere near George Kittle right now. Run blocking, there's not that big of a difference between any of them, but Kittle has a 65, Ben Sims has a 63, Tucker Kraft has a 58, and then some random guy I don't care about, 55 for the 49ers. All right, quickly, let's flip over to defense comparatively. I think I'm going to primarily stick to PFF just for the sake of time here. So hilariously, the interior defensive line is just garbage across the board. The highest graded defensive lineman, I'll give you $1,000 if you could tell me who it is. It is a Packer, so that'll give you, it's Carl Brooks. If we eliminate whatever. As far as run defense, the second highest run defense grade is a 52. It's a 52. The second highest overall grade is a 57. Second highest tackling grade, I'm saying second highest because there's like one that kind of stands out. Second highest tackling grade is a 47. There are 3 guys, the highest pass rush grade is a 68. This is just a bad group. So as far as highest to lowest graded, Carl Brooks with a 61, Malik Collins, 57, Jordan Elliott, if you don't know their name, they're 49ers, 56, Devontae Wyatt, 55, Khalil Davis, 53, Kevin Givens, 51, Kenny Clark, 49, TJ Slayton, 43. Bottom 2 guys, Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton. Run defense is Elliott, Davis, Wyatt, and Clark. Slayton, so we got 3 right there in the middle. Then Malik Collins, Carl Brooks, Kevin Givens. It doesn't matter because everybody's terrible. Jordan Elliott is the only one with a 64 grade. Khalil Davis, 51, and it's all down from there. In fact, Khalil Davis and Devontae Wyatt are the only 2 in the 50s, and Clark and Slayton are in the 40s. Everybody else is in the 40s. Carl Brooks, low 40s, 41. Tackling grades are putrid across the board. I don't know if it's just right now the offensive lines are just so much better than defensive. I don't know what the heck is going on. Khalil Davis has the highest tackling grade with a 54. Jordan Elliott, 46. Our highest is Devontae Wyatt, which, by the way, is terrible because he is terrible as far as his run defense and tackling. He's a pure pass rusher. And right now he has our highest tackling grade. That is so freaking bad. Then Kevin Givens, then Kenny Clark in the 30s with a 38.4. Carl Brooks, 36. Malik Collins, 36. TJ Slayton, 28.5 tackling grade. This guy is 320 pounds, and he can't bring people down. I mean, you're not graded on tackles unless you have an opportunity to tackle somebody. We're just talking about you missed a tackle. That's it. Highest pass rush grade, Kevin Givens, 68. Malik Collins, 67. And then it's all the way down to TJ Slayton, our only guy in the 60s with a 60. Devontae Wyatt, 59. Carl Brooks, 59. Kenny Clark, 58. Khalil Davis, 56. Jordan Elliott, 50. If we look at overall pressures, Malik Collins has 30 pressures on 284 attempts and 5 sacks. He is leading both teams in pressures and sacks. In fact, it's not even close. The second highest. I want to just to give you a picture of how insane this is. Kenny Clark has played 1 more snap than Malik Collins. He is, as far as pass rush, we're talking 25 less pass rush attempts, 284 to 258. They're basically the same. Malik Collins has 30 pressures. Kenny Clark has 16. Malik Collins has 5 sacks. Kenny Clark has 0. In fact, he's the only guy outside of Jordan Elliott to not have a single sack this season. Absolutely crazy. 16 pressures on 258 attempts is abysmal. Devontae Wyatt, 12 pressures on 135 attempts. We're talking, 9% or something. It's not good, but it's about as good as you're going to get on this freaking team. Carl Brooks, 12 pressures on 163. That's even worse. I don't know what that is. Kevin Givens, 11. This is 49ers, 11 on 108. So that's above 10%. TJ Slayton, 10 on 118. Again, sitting probably 9-ish%. Khalil Davis, 8 on 103. Jordan Elliott, 3 on 119. That's got to be the worst of anybody. But they generally are 10% or above. We are not. We don't have a single guy at 10% on the defensive line, which is shocking. Again, Malik Collins with 5 sacks. Kevin Givens, 4. Devontae Wyatt, who's only played 7 games, is leading the Packers and third on this list with 3 sacks. Carl Brooks with 2. TJ Slayton, 1. Khalil Davis, 1. Jordan Elliott, Kenny Clark, 0. Missed tackle percentage. Kevin Givens, 25%. Khalil Davis and Malik Collins, 20%. I'm shocked that they have all the highest ones. Carl Brooks, 19%. Slayton, 18%. Wyatt, 17%. Jordan Elliott, 18%. Kenny Clark has the least missed tackles at 12.5%. I'm not sure why his tackle grade is so terrible, but must not just be missed tackles, I guess. Number 1 in stops is Malik Collins, followed by Carl Brooks, TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt. The only forced fumble is Carl Brooks. The only category Kenny Clark leads is penalties. He has 4 penalties. And then Malik Collins, 3. Elliott and TJ Slayton with 2. Wyatt and Givens with 1. Carl Brooks and Khalil Davis with 0. So well done for Kenny for finding a category that you can actually excel in. We're all very freaking proud of you. Switching over to edge rush, there's 2 good edge rushers. Well, there's 1 elite rusher, 1 good edge rusher. Nick Bosa, 90.3 pass rush grade. Rashawn Gary, 70. Kingsley with a 62. Sam Okuya, 62. Leonard Floyd, 54. Lucas Van Ness, 44. The one clearly standing out at the bottom. Run defense, Bosa, 74. Gary, 71. Then Kingsley, 60. And then all the way down with Lucas Van Ness again at the bottom. Tackling grade, actually, Bosa's the worst. It's kind of surprising. Rashawn Gary is number 1 at a 65. Nobody else is even in the 60s. You got 3 50s, and then Sam and Nick down in the 40s. So Lucas Van Ness not at the bottom of that. That's great. Pass rush grade, Nick Bosa has an 87. Then Sam Okuyoka, 67. Rashawn Gary is 63. All 50s down from there. Coverage, I don't super care. And then we get to pressures. Nick Bosa, 52 pressures and 8 sacks on 320 attempts. Number 2 is Leonard Floyd, who has 35 pressures and 7 sacks on 257 attempts. Those are incredible. Rashawn Gary, 25, 252 attempts, 4 sacks. We're 9.99% pass rush rate. Again, it is getting better, but good Lord. Freaking good Lord. Third best behind the 2 top guys, including Leonard Floyd, who's 900 years old. Lucas Van Ness, of course, is at the bottom. He hasn't even gotten to double-digit pressures yet. Pressures! He's also at the bottom of the sacks with just 1. In fact, the pressures are also exactly in order of sacks. Bosa, 8, Floyd, 7, then a huge drop down to Gary with 4, Sam, 3, Kingsley, 2, Lucas Van Ness with 1. Forced fumbles, Kingsley's with 2, bunch of guys with 1, Gary and Van Ness are the only 2 with 0. So, as far as it stands right now, Nick Bosa is by far the best pass rusher. You could argue Rashawn is number 2, but Leonard Floyd is also in that conversation, especially when you look statistically as a pass rusher. He's clearly been doing better this year. Looking at linebacker, highest graded, Fred Warner. Not super surprising, although I'm waiting for this guy to fall off. How old is Fred Warner? Oh, no, he's 28. I'm thinking of somebody else. Fred Warner is, 91 grade, just dominant. Number 2 is Eric Wilson, the guy we refuse to play. Then Edgerrin Cooper, another guy that we don't play enough. Then Isaiah McDuffie, then Devondre Campbell, former Packer. Then Quay Walker at the bottom. Go frickin' figure. The guy that's played the most is the guy that should not be playing as much. Run defense, it's Fred Warner, then Eric Wilson, then McDuffie, Edgerrin Cooper, Quay, and Devondre. It's so funny that those 2 are at the bottom of every category here. Tackling, well, here's where Quay tends to excel, apparently, which I don't know how. 72 for Fred Warner, then Quay at a 70, then Wilson, Cooper, McDuffie, Campbell at the very bottom. Again, I can't stop laughing. Pass rush is Edgerrin Cooper, then Eric Wilson. We don't do it enough. Then Quay, Fred, Devondre, McDuffie. So we've got 3 guys that are excelling at that better than Warner and Campbell. And then in coverage, Fred Warner is number 1, Eric Wilson number 2, Edgerrin number 3, then Devondre, McDuffie, Quay. I don't know what to say here. I mean, pretty much across the board, Eric Wilson's our best linebacker, followed by Edgerrin Cooper, followed by Isaiah McDuffie. But our number one is, of course, going to be Quay. Pressures, and this is not a percentage, but Quay leads with 7, then Cooper 5, McDuffie 4, Warner 4, Campbell 4, and then Eric Wilson 3. Obviously, attempts matter. Sacks, Edgerrin Cooper's leading with 3, Quay and Wilson with 2, Fred Warner 1, and then 0 for the rest. Missed tackle percentage, it's Campbell, then McDuffie, Cooper, Wilson, Quay, and then Fred Warner. In coverage, who's given up the most receptions? It's Campbell, then Warner, then Quay, McDuffie, Cooper, Wilson. Obviously, if we look at reception percentage, it'll be a little bit different. It's highest reception percentage. It's still Warner, Campbell, McDuffie, Quay, Cooper, Wilson. So it still stays that way. It's pretty impressive. Most yards given up, Devondre Campbell, then Quay, Warner, McDuffie, Cooper, Wilson. Touchdowns. McDuffie's given up 2, which is terrible considering he doesn't play all that often. Fred Warner's given up 2, Wilson and Devondre 1, Cooper and Quay have given up 0. Interceptions, Fred Warner 2, Eric Wilson 1. Pass breakups, Fred Warner 3, McDuffie 2, and then it's 1 for Cooper, Walker, Wilson, and Campbell. NFL passer ratings from best to worst. Eric Wilson's number 1 with an 84. Fred Warner, 91. Quay Walker, 96. Cooper, 101. Campbell, 104. And then McDuffie with a 117. Penalties, 1 for Cooper, Warner, and Campbell, 0 for the rest. Cornerbacks. Highest graded is Renardo Green. Who the heck is frickin' Renardo Green? He's a rookie second-round pick. How do I not remember? It's like I blanked out on the whole draft class. He is wildly inconsistent, but 2 of his last 3 games were a 91 and an 82, which is kind of propping up his grade. But he is the highest graded at a 79, followed by Jaire at a 75. Those are really your only 2 good corners. Then Isaac Yiadom falls down to a 66. Diamador Lenoir, I think he just got a big contract, 66. Then Valentine, 61. Charvarius Ward, 58. Keyshawn Nixon, 57. Eric Stokes, 52, and Nick McLeod with a 50. McLeod of the clan McLeod. If you know, you know, and we're best friends. Run defense, not as important, but it's there. It's 2 top guys are 49ers, Yiadom and Green. Yiadom is the only one with a 72. Keyshawn, 66. As I said, he excels at that. Stokes, 61. Then Valentine, Jaire, Lenoir, McLeod of the clan McLeod, and Charvarius Ward. Tackling, the only 2 good ones are Yiadom and Stokes. The 3 terrible ones are Valentine, Jaire, and McLeod of the clan McLeod. And then coverage grades. You got 3 good ones. Renardo Green, 80. Jaire, 78. Lenoir, 73. Then you got Yiadom, Ward, and Valentine in the low 60s. Keyshawn Nixon, McLeod, and Stokes are the bad ones of the 3. So again, with the Keyshawn thing, I know this last game I think kind of broke a lot of people on Keyshawn, but he was never really that great as far as coverage goes. He kind of he disappeared for a while when we put him out on the boundary, and it's like, well, maybe he's doing it. I don't know, but now it's just falling apart. Reception percentage, who's given up, receptions per target, whatever. From worst to best, it's McLeod at 82%, Valentine 75%, Stokes, Nixon, Lenoir, Green, Yiadom are all in the 60s, and then the 2 top ones, Jaire just allowing 56%, and then Charvarius Ward 53%. Yards given up, Lenoir about 400, Eric Stokes just under 300, Nixon 263, then Yiadom, Ward, Jaire down at 227, Green at 215, McLeod 170, Valentine just 67 yards. Touchdowns given up. Keyshawn Nixon has given up the most by far. 4 touchdowns given up. Renardo Green, Stokes, and Alexander have given up 2. McLeod of the clan McLeod, Yiadom, Ward 1, Lenoir, Valentine 0. Interceptions, Lenoir and Jaire with 2 picks. Green and Yiadom with 1. It's really upsetting that Jaire has been hurt so much. He's tied for the most of the group. Nobody else has any picks. Pass breakups, Lenoir 4. Green, Nixon, Yiadom, Jaire, and Ward all have 3. Valentine 1. Stokes and McLeod 0. Passer rating from best to worst, Lenoir, then Jaire, Yiadom, Ward, Green, Valentine, Stokes, Nixon, and McLeod. So, and then penalties. Lenoir has the most with 6. Keyshawn 4. Yiadom, Alexander, Ward 2. Green, Stokes, Valentine 1, McLeod of the Clan, McLeod 0. And finally, safeties. Okay, so I was wrong. These guys' grades are still way, way up, even though they've had a bad couple games here. So it's by far in the Green Bay Packers' favor, although they got to step it up. McKinney with an 86, Evan Williams with an 81, then Malik Mustafa 65, Jaire Brown 65. Like it's not even freaking close. Now again, McKinney has not had a good game since week 5. Since week 5. No bad games except against Chicago 57, but not a single game in the 70s or higher since week 5. And Evan Williams since week 6. So, they've got high grades propped up by like 3 or 4 really good games early in the season. So I don't know how much to necessarily read into this, but we don't really need to go any deeper than that. Malik Mustafa and Jaire Brown, they've actually gone the other way. Malik Mustafa started playing well week 6. He was terrible before that. Jaire Brown similarly had 3 of his best games the last 3 weeks. So I would say that is a massive illusion. In fact, let me do this. Let me look at, let's just do the last 3 weeks for the heck of it. If you look at the last 3 weeks, Jaire Brown and Malik Mustafa are the highest, followed by Javon Bullard, McKinney at a 61, Evan Williams at a 53. So McKinney and Williams are the 2 worst safeties, even behind Bullard, if you just look at the last 3 weeks. So let's not get overly carried away with the safeties, because it's been, they're just massively propped up by something they were doing a long time ago and have not done since. I guess the silver lining here is Javon Bullard is a 63 grade the last 3 weeks, which, I mean, he's really was quite awful. And that's with a 44. We can go back. Let's go back to week 6. I'm just curious. No, he goes down. Whatever. If you look at from week 6, which is completely arbitrary, but it's funny. Malik Mustafa 67, Jaire Brown 67, McKinney 65, Bullard 57, Evan Williams 54. Nobody's good out of this group, and Evan Williams and Bullard are the worst. Got to pick it up, man. That's that inconsistency we were talking about. Anyways, I'm going to get out of here. I'm not doing kickers and all that. We've gone on too long. Bottom line, I would say it's hard to argue the 49ers aren't a better football team. I do think the Packers have a competitive team. I think in some areas they're better, or it feels like in a lot of areas they're almost as good, but not quite. Receivers are almost as good, but not quite. Quarterback, decent, but not quite. We didn't look at the offensive line. Dang it. Real quick. Left tackle. Trent Williams is better than Rasheed Walker in pass blocking and significantly in run blocking. At left guard, Aaron Banks is not as... Elton Jenkins is a better pass blocker, but Aaron Banks is a better run blocker. At center, Josh Myers is a way better pass blocker, believe it or not. Jake Brendel, I remember they were talking trash about him a long time ago being a serious problem. 70 for Josh Myers, which is actually really good. But a 42 pass blocking for Brendel. Complete opposite, almost exact opposite for run blocking. 71 for Brendel, 49 for Myers. At right guard, Sean Ryan, it's actually close for pass blocking. It's not close overall. Mr. Puny for San Francisco has an 84 overall because he has 84 run blocking, 71 pass blocking. Sean Ryan, 56 run blocking, 68. So he's just a better right guard. And then right tackle, Zach Tom is just better across the board. 80 pass blocking compared to 69 for Colt McKivitz, and then 82 run blocking compared to 64. So we have a better right tackle. They have a better right guard. We have a better center. I would say we have a better left guard because I just don't care as much about run blocking. And then left tackle, they have a better one at Trent Williams. But even Trent Williams is not like the Trent Williams of old, like the most dominant elite player in the world. He's very good. But we're talking, so since 2020, since he went to San Francisco, 91, 97, 92, 93, 85. So this is what I mean about Zach Tom, by the way. He is down to Zach Tom level. Whereas before he was like premier elite, best we've ever seen in the freaking world type of player. Now he's down to being just a very good player, which is where Zach Tom is. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. Maybe you give the Packers the slight edge because it's home field advantage. The 49ers are kind of slipping. They're kind of in this like, oh crap rut. They're not flying high because we're the dominant team. You know, they're kind of playing from behind a little bit. So maybe because of that, you give them the edge. I don't really know. I would I would say this is a freaking coin toss. Throw the records out the door. It doesn't matter. 5 wins compared to 7. It's completely irrelevant to the situation. I think looking at DVOA, I think actually makes a lot of sense after looking at the team. You're looking at like what the 8th best team against the 5th best team or something stupid like they're both good teams. 49ers are a little bit better is where I would probably put it. All right, as for the injury report, the 49ers are still kind of going through it. Christian McCaffrey, who did not participate on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday. In addition, all the guys that were limited on Wednesday continue to be limited on Thursday. That includes John Feliciano, Brock Purdy, Charvarius Ward, and George Kittle. Kind of a weird situation with Brock Purdy, quote-unquote, taking himself out of practice and was not throwing. I don't know what the situation there is exactly. I'll have to look into that in a little bit here. It'll be for tomorrow maybe. And then you've got everybody else that did not participate on Wednesday, did not participate on Thursday. That includes Tatum Bethune with a knee injury, hasn't practiced all week. Nick Bosa with a hip and oblique injury, has not practiced all week. Kevin Givens, defensive tackle with a groin injury, has not practiced all week. Trent Williams, the offensive tackle, has not practiced all week. And then Jacob Cowing, who was limited on Wednesday with a concussion, did not participate on Thursday. So they have 5 guys that did not participate. And then McCaffrey is the one that did come back but is still practicing in limited fashion. As for the Packers, the big news and the not-so-good news is Jaire Alexander is still hurt, and it looks like he's going to be out for a little while. Jaire Alexander told The Athletic today that he suffered a tear in his PCL earlier in the season, and he re-aggravated that injury against Chicago. He is unsure of his return timetable, but he's confident he'll return to all-pro form later this season. That's what Matt Schneidman said in his article from The Athletic. Mike Clemens commented on that and said cornerback Jaire Alexander could be out a while, torn PCL. So there will not be Jaire this week, and I don't know how long that's going to be. In addition to that, a little bit more bad news. Edgerrin Cooper was added with a hamstring injury. He did not practice. He was limited the day before and then was downgraded to not practicing. Sounds like there's a good chance he will not be playing this week. So we're going to be without Jaire. We're going to be without Edgerrin Cooper. We may be without Jaire for a while. And as far as hamstrings go, as I'd mentioned before, these things can be cleared up pretty fast, or they can just frickin' linger and just not go away. But obviously got worse for Edgerrin, and he was going in the wrong direction. And again, doesn't look like he's going to be playing. So anyways, I'm going to leave it at that for now. You guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.